After years of favoritism and conditional support, my parents gave my sister a BMW with a red bow and handed me $2, even as my daughter was in treatment. That night, I left, blocked them, and learned that boundaries can be a kind of love you give yourself. The night stood still around their house like it knew it was seeing something it wasn't supposed to. The air had that heavy sweetness that clings to midsummer in our town: mown grass, grill smoke, and somebody playing the same country song on loop a few blocks away. Porch lights dotted the cul-de-sac. If you climbed onto the limestone boulder at the edge of the yard and looked past the sycamores, you could see the street lamps throw pale gold halos on asphalt, like coins tossed into a dark sea. I was holding June's pink water bottle in one hand and a paper plate with a half-eaten burger in the other. She was asleep inside, finally, belly up on the leather couch with one sandal still on because I couldn't bear to wake her and fight a new battle during an old one. My parents had strung fairy lights across the backyard and set a table with framed pictures of Alyssa. Alyssa with her cheer captain sash, Alyssa at prom in rose gold sequins, Alyssa with her diploma, her lashes so thick they looked like wings, and then, with the timing of stage magicians, they rolled out the final photo op. It was the red bow that got me. That absurd, glossy ribbon flopped over the hood of the BMW like a petal on some giant poisonous flower. Everyone clapped. Someone whistled. Alyssa put her hands to her mouth and screamed, half laughing, feigning disbelief because we are taught to pretend we don't know what we are already owed. My mother turned to me with a card. She smiled the way she always smiles when she wants people to think she's gentle. The envelope was thick, embossed with cursive. There were 2 crumpled dollar bills inside. "Just a little luck," she said, almost whispering. "For you and June." I felt the cold, clean moment you feel when you step into deep water, and it closes over your head. Quiet, clear, inevitable. You see everything at once down there. The bottom, the distant light, your own hands moving.
We sang.
We ate cake. We cleaned up. At 1 a.m., I slid June into her car seat, buckled her gently so the strap wouldn't chafe the port in her chest, and pulled out of that driveway. I parked at the end of the block, blocked my parents' numbers, and let the town's dark swallow me. The bow was still visible in the rearview mirror, a red ghost floating in their porch light like a heart I had finally returned. Before it broke, there were years I tried to pretend we were normal. Their house on Maple Street had shutters my dad painted navy blue every other summer, and a mailbox he fixed himself with a new hinge when the snowplow knocked it crooked. You don't think to notice things like that until you're older and living in apartments where someone else's neglect builds up around you like sediment. My sister was 3 years behind me. Alyssa. We fought like sisters, sure, but we also watched each other's backs in that way kids do before they learn who the favorites are. I remember the 2 of us at the kitchen table making slime from glue and shaving cream, my mother passing by every 10 minutes, sighing, wiping the counters again, reminding us she liked neat girls. When I was 9, I broke my wrist falling off the monkey bars at recess. Dad took off work to come get me from the nurse's office. He drove me to Riverton Regional, cracked jokes about me being a circus performer with a brand new trick, and stopped for a milkshake on the way home. Alyssa climbed into my bed that night and asked if the doctor saw the bones. She looked kind of thrilled at the idea of inside things being seeable. But then it started. The small knocks that don't feel like knocks until they leave a bruise. At 13, I tried out for dance and made the mid-level team. Alyssa made elite. My mother clapped like her hands were on fire at Alyssa's practices, and I could see my father counting the costs in his head. Uniforms, travel, extra tap shoes, and when he got to mine, he adjusted the sum down because, yours is just girls having fun, honey. At 15, I saved money from the register at Hawthorne Supply, the family store downtown my grandpa opened, to buy the used Civic Mr. Carruthers was selling for $2,000. My mother sat me down at the dining room table while my dad kept the calculator out, like we were going to balance my dreams against their ledger. "You can share the Camry with us," she said, hand on my knee. Alyssa, 12 and on her second elite team, dumped her glittery backpack on the table and asked if there were grapes. I started to clock how my father talked about us. "Alyssa is our sparkle," he'd say, ruffling her hair while she leaned into his side like a sleepy cat. Hannah is our steady. Sparkle gets the spotlight. Steady gets the weight. Senior year, I got into Ohio State. We had the banner on the pergola for pictures. My mother wearing a scarf in school colors, my father in a polo like he'd always been a fan. But the family savings conversation turned into a raffle where every ticket had Alyssa's name on it. There's a job at Hawthorne Supply for you if you want to stay close, my father said. You can go to Riverton Community for your first 2 years. Save us all a little. He didn't say it mean. He never said things mean. He said them like they were sunrises. I stayed. Maybe for them. Maybe for the way my stomach nodded at the thought of leaving my sister. I enrolled in classes, worked the store, bagged bolts of rope and bins of screws for men who had the same squint as my father. I stacked boxes in the stockroom, dust sticking to my arms, and dreamed about breathing different air, new city smells, hot concrete and rain. Something electric. Tyler came into the store for drywall anchors and laughed at a joke I don't remember making. We went to the lake in his beat-up truck, and I learned what it was to feel wanted without being required. When I got pregnant at 19, I told my mother at the kitchen table that made so many unwelcome announcements. I knew, she said, glancing at my stomach like it had betrayed her directly. We'll figure it out. But we had a price, and it was me living at home. My things fitted around their things like I was a guest in a museum. Tyler tried for 6 months. Then he stopped trying. Sometimes people are roads, and sometimes they're cul-de-sacs. June was born on a muggy July afternoon when cicadas screamed so loud it felt like the sky could crack from the sound. She howled like something brand new to the world, and then she quieted, and then I quieted, and I remember this. My mother taking a picture of my father holding her, his large hands swallowing her lemon-sized feet, and a feeling like relief and warning and love. June grew into a little person like she was racing me to become someone I could recognize. We lived downstairs. My parents lived upstairs like the bosses of an invisible company I worked for. I picked up shifts at the library in town, put her in the daycare that smelled like animal crackers and tempera paint, carried her asleep from the car to her bed with the lights off so the stairs wouldn't wake her. Alyssa kept twirling through life, eyes lined and lips glossy. She got chosen to be featured at a dance convention in Chicago, and my parents funded it like she'd won a grant. I was told we'd figure out June's preschool later, when there weren't so many sudden expenses. Sometimes my father would lean in my doorway, knock his knuckles on the frame. He'd say, "Honey, you're doing great," like I'd been on stage and he'd wandered into the theater halfway through. When June was 4, the streak of purple bruise under her skin on her shin didn't go away. She started getting tired on walks. She wanted to be held when she used to want to run. A nosebleed wouldn't stop one morning, and we sat on the bathroom floor while I pinched her nostrils and rocked her, and she whispered, "Mama," like she was trying it out. Riverton Regionals smelled like antiseptic and coffee. We took an elevator that sounded like it had a cold to the second floor. The pediatric oncologist said the words like he was setting stones in my hands, one by one, and waiting to see what I would do with the weight. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The kind you can treat, he said. A plan, he said. A roadmap. We went home with a folder and a calendar full of dates, with a new language. Port, counts, neutropenia. We had a bag by the door. We had a pile of hospital socks on the dryer, each with those little white rubber grips on the bottom, like teeth. The infusion room had a mural painted with jungle animals and a fish tank that made everything feel slower, water-hushed. June called the nurses her needle friends. My mother took pictures for Facebook and wrote long captions about courage with my daughter's face in them. My father brought sandwiches for everyone in the waiting room and shook hands like he was running for something. He also brought conditions. They arrived quietly, attached to kindness like a price tag turned backward. "We'll help with gas money if you put a call into the fundraiser committee my mother's friend was putting together. We'll pay for the first round of meds if you talk to Alyssa about being more respectful in the house. We'll watch June during your shift at the library if you give us your spare key, and stop locking the downstairs door at night." I did what people do when they think they're drowning and someone throws them a rope. I grabbed it and tried not to look too closely at who held the other end. Riverton is the kind of town where people show up for events that sound like they belong in novels. There was a spaghetti dinner at the firehouse with a laminated picture of June at each table. There was a silent auction where someone donated a romantic weekend at the lake, and someone else donated a brand new grill, and someone else gave a basket of lotions and bath bombs and blankets you wanted to sink into. $12,000, they told me. Maybe 14. A nice cushion while you're in the thick of it. They wrote checks to my parents because my mother said it would be easier.
"We'll manage it," she said.
You have enough on your plate. I kept track of everything anyway. I bought a cheap notebook with a watercolor cover and wrote every receipt in it with dates and notes and the names of the people who gave me cash. It made me feel sane to line up the numbers, to calculate meaning from math. I kept the notebook in the freezer in a Ziploc because someone told me years ago that's where you kept important things safe from fire. It felt like superstition by way of caution, neutral and practical, not magical, not praying, just cold facts I could hold in my hand when my head got too hot. During all of this, Alyssa got prettier. It sounds bitter to say, but it's the truth. She moved through rooms like she already knew she belonged, and in a way that was true. She dropped out of community college to work at a salon doing lashes, and suddenly there was my mother making a spreadsheet of supplies and costs and potential clients, my father telling everyone at the store about her business, like he had a share in it. She posted videos with bad music and introspective captions. Girls from our high school booked with her and slid into the kitchen to giggle and pay her cash. One night, when June had finally fallen asleep after a round of steroids made her mean in a way that scared both of us, my father called me upstairs to talk about household contributions. It's not that we don't want to help, he said, hands folded on the table like he was at a deposition, but you're making choices that affect all of us. Like scheduling chemo on days we have deliveries. I laughed then. It came out like a cough. Do you want me to check with the cancer before we book next time? He flinched. Watch your tone, Hannah. Watch your priorities, I said, but softer, because I still lived there. Because the rent was a line in a ledger I hadn't written. Because June was sleeping in the next room. The world expanded until it was full of numbers that translated into whether or not my daughter could live. We had weeks where the count meant we couldn't go to the park, couldn't go to the grocery store, couldn't go anywhere except the hospital. We had low moments when the child life specialist handed me a box of tissues and told me to feel whatever I felt, and let June see me do that because kids know when you are lying with your face. We had normal moments too. My daughter insisted on wearing 2 different shoes to her checkup because she was 4 and had opinions like the weather. Money dripped out of all of it like a leak you can't find. Even with insurance, the copays stack up like bricks. My parents gave half with one hand and took quarter with the other. We'll cover this if you hold off on that, my mother said, pointing to my plans like they were labels on jars she could rearrange. When my car gave up and shuddered into silence at an intersection, I stood in the heat and watched people drive around me like a rock in a river and called my father for help. We'll talk about it, he said. Alyssa needs a reliable vehicle too. Mine is dead, I said. It's dead.
He sighed.
You are always so dramatic.
I learned to stop asking.
Marisol from the library picked me up for morning shifts and refused gas money. My neighbor, Ben, an old man who still wore his high school ring, let me borrow his lawnmower to do a few yards for cash. His granddaughter, a quiet teenager who never smiled with her teeth, dropped off casseroles I pretended I loved. Alyssa got her treats anyway. Little gifts, big ones. A dress for an event. A new phone. Trips. Always with the language my parents loved. She deserves. She worked so hard. She lights up a room. She will go far. The kind of sentences that make you want to write your own. I know what you're thinking. I know because I thought it too. Why didn't I rage? Why didn't I explode the ways girls on TV do? Throw plates, slam doors, pitch a screaming fit that ends with everyone crying on the floor, the truth painted onto the walls like blood. Because some of us learned that being the steady one is the only way to survive in a house that makes you carry more than your share. Because I thought if I kept my head down and did everything right, I would earn something soft. Because I needed them, even as I watched them keep what I needed just out of reach like a trick. The party for Alyssa's 21st was the kind of production my mother is good at. She loves details that look like love. There were mason jars wrapped in twine with battery-powered tea lights inside. There was a photo booth backdrop with a sequined curtain, a basket of props, and a chalk sign with her name in bubbly letters. My father kept walking the perimeter like a foreman, checking on the grill, adjusting speakers, counting the drinks. June was 6 and bone-thin in that way steroid kids get, moon face and stick legs, fragile loudness. She wore a pink cap to cover the hair she was losing in soft, heartbreaking clumps. She still smiled big for pictures. She still wanted to play store at the drink table and charged people a penny for each soda. She fell asleep after the fireworks my father set off in the driveway. I had asked for nothing. I had rehearsed a speech for weeks about maybe, if they could, they might consider a small loan to fix the transmission on my car so we could stop riding the bus to the hospital, so I wouldn't have to keep asking Marisol to wake up at 5 to pick us up. I had practiced making myself smaller, so my request would fit inside their version of me. They gave Alyssa a BMW with a red bow. Red like hearts and warnings and stop signs. Red like the ribbon of blood when you're getting it wrong. Alyssa put her hands over her mouth and sobbed, and her sobs were beautiful. Everyone clapped. People cried. My mother cried. My father made a toast and called her our bright star and told her the payments would be handled under the family umbrella, the kind of phrase men use when they want to sound generous while they tally the exact cost. I had to sit down because I felt dizzy. The grass looked like it was tilting. Someone handed me a bottled water. The cap popped open with a clean click, and I thought I could cry about that sound for the rest of my life. My mother found me by the hedge and handed me a card. It was heavy and pretty, like a wedding invitation. There were 2 crumpled dollar bills inside. Not even crisp. Bills from the bottom of a purse. She touched my wrist. "For luck," she said. "Everything will turn around." It took me a full minute to understand what I was holding. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to shove the money into the frosting of Alyssa's cake and watch it stick. I wanted to throw it in the air and yell tips at the women taking pictures on their phones with the BMW like it was a public landmark. Instead, I nodded. I tucked the card into my bag. I helped load chairs into the garage and smiled for pictures and changed June out of her jammy dress into her regular clothes when she woke up and wandered outside, confused, asking where the stars were. They were there, above us. We just couldn't see them because we had made so much light. At 1 a.m., the house got quiet in the particular way houses get quiet after parties, when you can smell the remains of joy and sweat and alcohol and grilled meat in the dark. I stood in the doorway of my room and looked at the life I had been keeping afloat like someone trying a magic trick where the table stays upright even as the cloth is yanked from under the plates. June's stuffed elephant leaned against the pillow. The hospital bag waited by the door, packed like always. My notebook, the one with every receipt, warmed under my palm when I took it out of the freezer. I thought about 1,000 things at once and decided in the space between 2 breaths. Not a plan so much as a fact that had finally finished forming. I texted Marisol. "Are you awake?" She answered in a minute. "Why are you even asking me that? Come over." I lifted June, still half asleep, still smelling like salt and cake, slid her sandals on. I carried her to the car, buckled her carefully, kissed the side of her head where the hair was starting to grow back like grass after a fire. I loaded the bag, the notebook, the box of medicine, the elephant. I went back upstairs for the last time and looked at the kitchen table where so many deals had been made that felt like love but weren't. I wrote a note because it felt right to leave a trace. It said, "We're safe. Don't call." I blocked my parents' numbers in the driveway, hand shaking a little in that fine way like the tremors you get after running. I reversed so slowly it must have looked like I was afraid to wake the car. The bow's red flashed in my rear view, and then it got smaller, and then it was gone. Marisol lives off Oakwood, in an apartment that smells like cumin and clean laundry. She keeps her shoes by the door, and she keeps snack bars in a basket for whoever needs the sugar. She put a blanket on her couch for us and filled a cup with water and told me I didn't have to explain anything until I wanted to. June rolled toward me in her sleep, the way she did when she was a baby, palm open, trust absolute. I didn't sleep. My whole body was awake, even the parts one usually can ignore. I opened my notebook. I flipped to the first page. I reminded myself that I kept track. When the sun split the blinds into a ladder of light on the wall, I felt like I could breathe the way people breathe in normal life. I called the library and asked for a week off. My boss, Joan, said yes because she used to be a person before she was a boss and missed being that sometimes. I went to legal aid that afternoon because Marisol told me to go and because a woman named Deanna down the hall had gone last year when her landlord tried to keep her deposit. The office in Riverton is across from the old courthouse, a 2-story brick building that looks like it eats paper. The woman at the desk wore glasses and a t-shirt with the word advocate on it. "How can we help?" she asked, and I opened my notebook like a mouth. I told them about the fundraiser checks made out to my parents. I told them about the raffle, the dinner, the cash. I told them about the "we'll help you ifs" and the car that died, and the BMW. I told them about the house, the way money was a leash. I didn't cry.
I felt weird for not crying.
The woman nodded like she had a metronome inside her keeping time with me. They took notes. They made a plan to send a letter asking for an accounting of the funds raised in June's name. They told me not to panic. They told me I was not crazy for thinking what I was thinking. I got a room at a hotel with a weekly rate just off the highway, the kind where the carpet always looks damp and the ice machine sounds like it's dying. It was weirdly quiet. My body missed the noise of my parents' house, and then remembered that missing noise can be a kind of peace. Marisol brought us her extra coffee maker. Ben showed up in the parking lot with a toaster wrapped in a towel. "Don't ask why I have two," he said. "Just take the nicer one." Tyler texted when he saw the change of address on the portal for June's appointments. He asked if I needed anything. I wrote back what I always write: "Your daughter needs you." He gave me 2 hearts and vanished. My parents didn't call because they couldn't. They sent emails. They sent one to my work boss. They sent one to my aunt. They sent a long one to me through a burner email Alyssa made on her salon laptop because she knows how to be a person in 2023. It was all roses and knives. "You're so dramatic. We're so concerned for June. We have always supported you. We will not be abused. We are consulting a lawyer. Families should make sacrifices. The BMW was a business decision. You are ungrateful." I closed my laptop and made mac and cheese in the hotel microwave. I fed June a forkful. She asked, "Are we at a cabin?"
"Kind of," I said. "Kind of."
We found a little second-story apartment over a hair supply store in the old part of downtown with windows that looked out onto the street. June liked the big window. She watched people walk by and named the dogs. We moved in on a Thursday because there was no point waiting until a weekend for something you know you're going to do. At night, after the street cleaned itself of noise and I had washed the few dishes twice because it felt good to be the person who decided what clean was, I would sit with my notebook and line up the facts. Fundraiser money collected. An estimate. Funds provided to me by parents. A number. Medical bills paid from my account. Numbers. Alyssa's new BMW. Purchased on or around my daughter's worst week that summer. I did what I always do when I am trying not to be gaslit by a life that says I should be grateful for being set on fire. I collected receipts. I wrote the dates. I made the feelings wait outside while I did math. Then my father died. That's the sentence you drop in like you're placing a stone, and it lands and the water changes around it, and you can't tell the ripples from the original shape. It was sudden. He was 61 and stubborn about vegetables. He collapsed at Hawthorne Supply while telling a customer about decking screws. The customer called 911 and then called my mother. An ambulance, the light, the drive. A night that scraped itself into the morning like frost. He didn't make it out of the ICU. When I got the email from Alyssa, 2 sentences that looked like someone had cut their hands if you looked close. "Dad, please call." I felt the body memory of my father's hand on my shoulder, heavy like end-of-day light, that you don't know you crave until you see it from across a crowded room and it doesn't wave back. I went to the hospital with June because I didn't know what else to do. Families show up for sickness and death because we're programmed to, not because we've earned it. My mother was there, hair done, lipstick on, eyes the color of a bruise. Alyssa was there, mascara running like she had seen that in a movie and wanted to get it right. "So you came," my mother said, and I realized she had rehearsed a different reaction for me. probably for the version where I stayed away and she could talk about my cruelty to anyone who would listen. I messed up her monologue by being human. I touched his shoulder. It was warm. There were tubes. Machines breathed, where his chest wouldn't. He looked smaller. I thought about the day he bought me a baseball glove and taught me how to catch in the yard by throwing me balls soft as questions. I thought about the day he told me I could live downstairs forever if I wanted. I thought about the BMW. There wasn't anything dramatic to do. He died in the morning with the sun washing the room in the color of a new day none of us wanted. My mother made phone calls. Alyssa made a post. I hugged a nurse I had never met before because she looked like she could stand. Funerals in our town happen in two flavors. The ones in the old chapel off Main with stained glass, and the ones at the event space near the lake where you can request a playlist and eat meatballs. We chose the second because my mother likes pretending that grief is a party. If you can orchestrate it, she will. There were picture boards with my dad at every age. Teenager with a bowl cut, college boy with a bad mustache, young father in a tank top by a grill, grandpa with June in his lap. There were platters. There was a video with 100 faces that looked like mine in some angle or another. People said the kinds of things people say when a person who is decent to them is gone. They laughed about his corny jokes. They used their hands more than usual. I kept to corners. June colored with her aunt at a side table, meticulously, tongue slipping out the corner of her mouth. My mother leaned on people like rails. Every time someone told me what a good man he was, what a good father, I said yes because they weren't wrong, not exactly. People are round, even the ones who shape your life in sharp ways. The day after the funeral, a man named Larkin called me. He was my father's lawyer, and I know what you're thinking. We're getting to the will. We are. There's a small office above the coffee shop where the ceiling fans are beautiful in the way old things can be. He had a plant in the corner that looked like it had lived through more than any of us. He started with condolences and ended with paperwork. My mother sat next to me, lips pressed together, hands in her lap. Alyssa picked at a thread on her skirt like she had found a loose end in her life and was trying to decide if pulling it would make everything unravel. Your father was thorough, Mr. Larkin said, which is lawyer speak for controlling. He left the house to my mother, the business to my mother, his accounts to my mother, his tools to Alyssa, and a $5,000 bond, in gratitude for your presence in his latter years to me. I could have left the office and gotten a used car that didn't wait for me at the bus stop. I felt something like static in my head. What about the funds, my college account? I asked, surprising even myself by saying it. It popped out of my mouth like a fish. He glanced down at the paperwork, at the pages shuffled like cards. The UTMA established when you were a minor? Yes. My mother adjusted her posture. We used it for her, she said, too quickly. We always did.
For me, I said. When?
For what? Groceries, dance, things, she said. You know how it is. I did. I looked at Mr. Larkin because he was the adult in the room who wasn't family and therefore had a better chance of being neutral. Is that allowed? He folded his hands. Under Ohio law, the custodian of a UTMA can spend the funds for the benefit of the minor. It's broad. The standard is use and benefit. He gave me a look one gives someone in a storm. Paperwork helps. I reached into my bag and put my notebook on the table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I turned to the page I had flagged with a sticky note and slid it across to him. These are the checks from the June Strong fundraiser, I said. Donors and amounts. Here are the deposits my parents told me they made on my behalf into a medical fund. Here are the payments I made and the checks I received. Here is the date of the BMW purchase, and here are the days my mother wrote me that they couldn't help with bus fare because things were tight. I am not accusing. I'm asking for an accounting. My mother's face went very still. Mr. Larkin looked at me and saw, I think, what I had always been under their version of me. His mouth twitched like he was trying not to show that he cared. He turned to my mother. Do you have the accounting for the fundraiser? People gave cash, my mother said. We have receipts. Alyssa, he asked. She volunteers for a lot of causes, my mother said, and I looked at Alyssa. Her chin lifted a fraction. The Bow's ghost lifted in my head. It's been a hard year, I said. I could be wrong, but I kept the receipts. We didn't explode that day either. There are fights that never happen because they'd feel better than the slow thing you actually have to do. This was going to be the slow thing. Mr. Larkin sent letters. Legal aid sent letters. We did not sue. I could have. Maybe I should have. Build that into your vision of me if you need to. It is true that there were days I wanted to burn the town down, to stand on Main Street and hold up a sign with numbers on it to say, Here is what you think generosity is. Look at it and tell me it's love. When the accounting came, it was half done, half right, full of holes you could fit a person through. I saw the flows of money. In from the spaghetti dinner, out to the house's electric bill. In from the silent auction, out to household expenses, which could mean anything. I saw something else, too. Something I had suspected but never lined up to face. The month before the BMW appeared, a check for $12,000 written to BMW of Dayton from my parents' personal account. 3 weeks later, a check from the June Strong account into that same personal account for almost exactly that amount. It wasn't smoking gun. It was smoke that filled a room and made it hard to breathe. I took the paper to Mr. Larkin. He looked tired. He might have been a decent man. He might have thought justice is a thing delivered in mail. He suggested a settlement. My mother would pay me the amount that had been shorted by their accounting. She would do it quietly. She would do it in 3 installments. We would not post on Facebook. We would not bring it to the spaghetti dinner committee. We would be, in a word, decent. We would be quiet. I said yes because I was tired, too. I said yes because June needed shoes and a new backpack, and the medication I had to call the pharmacy for every week, like asking a queen for the name of your child. I said yes because I wanted off the stage. It took months. In that time, I went back to work and got an evening shift at the coffee shop to add to the library. I made dinner for June from a rotating list of 5 meals I knew how to cook without looking. She got a little color back. We put the hospital calendar on the fridge, like art. Alyssa texted me the second installment came in. It was actually thoughtful. I'm sorry you feel hurt, she wrote, which is what people say when they are not saying I'm sorry. I didn't know how everything worked. I wasn't part of the decisions. I'm happy you got the money. She added a heart because it costs nothing. I asked her to meet me at Riverside Park by the river where kids feed bread to geese, even though there are signs asking them not to. She wore big sunglasses. She took them off when she sat down like she wanted to show she meant it. I miss you, she said. I miss you, too. I said, because you can miss someone while wanting them to jump too. We should start over, she said. We should start true, I said. What happened was wrong. Our parents are complicated, she said, like she was my age and I was hers. They are, I said. So are we. We sat. I told her what I could tell her without tearing either of us up and putting us back together wrong. She listened. She didn't apologize because maybe she didn't know how, and maybe if we waited she would one day. She showed me a picture of her latest set of lashes, fanned like butterfly wings, and I told her they were beautiful. Sometimes siblings forgive by agreeing on small truths. Not all stories have courtrooms. Mine didn't. It was the kind that happens in grocery stores when you meet eyes in the frozen pizza aisle and decide whether to nod. It was the kind that happens when the mail comes and you hold a check you were owed and think about what it means nothing and everything at once. It was the kind that happens when a kid finishes treatment on a Tuesday and you eat cupcakes in the infusion room with the nurses and June calls the 4-pole her robot friend one last time and everyone cries in the kind of way crying should be, soft and releasing, useful. My mother is still alive. She still lives in that house with the navy shutters. She drives the SUV my father bought 2 years before he died, and sometimes, when the light catches her hair just right, you can see the girl she was, the one who learned to survive by throwing parties and making people feel like they were the reason the room felt full. She never apologized either. She sent a text at Christmas with a picture of the tree and wrote, "Our door is always open," and I looked at the picture and felt nothing at all except a kind of compassion for a woman who thought love was control with nicer wrapping. I blocked my father's number that night at 1 a.m., and I have not unblocked it because he is unreachable in all the ways that word means now. Sometimes I think about him standing behind the counter at Hawthorne Supply, tapping bolts of rope and telling a guy named Mike that there's nothing more useful than knowing which knot you need at the right moment. I think about him calling me steady. I think about building a life where I am steady for myself. June has hair again. It curls at the ends in surprise. She is 8 now and wants a skateboard. I got her a helmet and knee pads and a heavy feeling that feels like hope. We stand in the parking lot near our apartment at dusk and practice balance. She falls and laughs. She says, "Watch me." And I do. Sometimes, driving home from the grocery store, we get stuck behind a BMW at a light. I glance at the red taillights and see a bow without meaning. My stomach doesn't flip anymore. My hands don't sweat. I turn on my blinker and take my own turn. We decorate our apartment with what we can afford and what makes us happy. Plants from the clearance section at the garden store, a rug that looks like confetti, a couch someone left on the curb that we clean like a mission. Friends come over and bring food. We choose them, and they choose us back, which is what being family can feel like if you do it on purpose. June calls Marisol her aunt without asking permission from anyone. Ben shows up with cake and stories about putting the football through the wrong goalpost in '74 and how he still thinks about it when he can't sleep, which I love, because we all have our haunting. I keep the notebook in a shoebox now with June's art and receipts and the letter from legal aid thanking me for my trust. I kept the $2 too. Not to attach luck. Not to attach anything. Just to prove I didn't make it up. We don't go to Maple Street much anymore. On the nights when the cicadas scream and the air presses down like a hand, I think about my mother turning off the lights one by one after a party, the red bows sagging into the trash, the plates stacked, the silence settling. I think about the young version of me cleaning up messes and thinking someone would say, "Thank you." We are different now. Not better or worse. Just people with edges we make ourselves. The knife doesn't live in my pocket anymore. I keep it on the counter by the chopping board with the other tools. When I need it, I know where it is. When I don't, I let it sit. I tell June that love is not something you owe people for feeding you. I tell her it is something you build, because the building makes you feel like yourself. We practice, every day, with posture and pasta and pictures and friends. We make our own bows for birthdays out of paper we have, and we put them on the presents we can afford, and we laugh when the bows look ugly. Tape has never offended me. It does its job without needing a moment. If there is a ghost in the car with me now, it is not red. It is a little girl laughing in the back seat. It is me, at 1 a.m., blocking numbers and making room. June's skateboard scraped the pavement tonight, a noise that sounds like someone getting it almost right. She looked back at me with eyes that mirror mine and said, "Watch." And I did, and she did it. And then we went inside to make dinner. Dear future me, and whoever told her she was steady. Look, you can build a life out of the receipts, out of the way you put things in your freezer that you want to keep safe. You can build a life out of people who show up in parking lots with toasters. You can build a life where sometimes there is a bow, but you put it there and it looks right because it is yours. Artifacts matter. So, do arms. I am somehow both. Epilogue artifact, voice memo transcript. Voice memo, 1:03 a.m., Saturday. Recorded on borrowed iPhone, Oakwood Apartments lot, parked. Okay. Hannah, listen to me. You are in the car with June asleep, and that is the most important fact. You are here because they gave a car with a bow to someone who did not need it in the way you asked for help, and they gave you $2, and you felt crazy. You are not crazy. You are tired. There is a difference. You have your notebook. You have June's meds. You have keys. You have a friend who told you to come over after midnight the way family should. When you wake up in a different bed, you're going to want to call and explain yourself. Don't. You left a note that said what you needed to say. We're safe. Don't call.
Keep that sentence.
Say it to anyone who wants to make you feel like you won a prize by being quiet. This is not about being dramatic. It is about being alive. In the morning, make coffee. Call legal aid. Put the notebook on the table like a map. Choose the next right thing, which is not a grand gesture. It is a Tuesday afternoon when you fill the prescription and play Uno and laugh because June cheats by putting the draw 4 card every time, and you let her. You are steady, but this is not your job. Let other people be steady on purpose. Let someone else be the pole the tent is tied to. Your hands can be free now. Put one on the wheel.
Breathe. Drive.
What I learned. A good story about a family is not the same thing as a good family. My parents were excellent at the performance, the generosity that photographs well. I learned that you can love people and not leave your child's life in their hands. Boundaries are not punishments. They are explanations. I thought leaving would make me the villain. It made me honest. The smallest voices expose the deepest truths. June's soft, "Are we at a cabin?" made me realize how close safety felt when it wasn't attached to someone else's conditions. Receipts matter. Not because money is everything, but because money is how people tell you what they value. Keeping track saved my sanity. It turned vague guilt into numbers that could be answered. Found family is not a consolation prize. Marisol, Ben, my boss with the easy yes, they were the net under my high wire. You can decide who is in your picture at the park. Grief is round. My father was good, and he was not. I carry both truths. Forgiveness, for me, little by little looks like not flinching when I drive by the store with his name on the lease. It looks like letting June hang her drawing of him on the fridge because both things can be in the same house. My sister is not my enemy. She is a person raised in a room that loved her differently. If she wants to come into my life on the terms that keep my home kind and safe, the door is open. It will always close if it needs to. Standing up for yourself costs something. I paid in sleep and silence and time. But the price of always sitting down would have been my life. I learned that the sound of a red bough brushing a hood fades. The sound of your child laughing through an open window never does. Author's note: if parts of this story resonate with your life, you're not alone. For grief and loss, the Dougie Center and local hospice bereavement programs can help. For family therapy or low-cost counseling, check your county's community mental health center or look up providers on Open Path Collective. If you suspect financial wrongdoing related to a fundraiser, consult your state's legal aid society or a consumer rights attorney. They can advise on documentation and options. For pediatric illness support, social workers at your hospital can connect you with nonprofit resources like Family Reach and Cancer Care. If stories like this help you feel less alone, consider following and sharing it with someone who might need it.